one to trust. By Gideon Chase. Chapter 1. The Wrong Place. Rain had a way of masking things, footsteps, whispers, even gunshots if the timing was just right. On the south side of Harridan City, where streetlights flickered like dying embers and alleys led to places better left unexplored, rain fell hard that night. And Marcus Hale, a quiet man with a quieter life, had no idea he was walking into the kind of storm that doesn't end when the clouds part. He had never been much of a risk taker. His life was regimented down to the minute. Work at the print shop from 8 to 4. Coffee at Marie's Diner by 4:15. Home by 5. A routine so mindless that even the pigeons seemed to know when to expect him. But tonight, a busted-down subway line rerouted his bus, and a spilled coffee cup forced him to take a different path. That was all it took, a series of small, ordinary deviations. And by 9:47 p.m., Marcus Hale became a witness to a murder. He heard the voices first, sharp, angry, the kind that raised hairs on the back of your neck. They echoed off the brick walls of an alley near Holloway Street, where neon signs buzzed but offered no real light. Marcus shouldn't have stopped. He should have kept walking, pretending he was deaf, blind, and already late. But curiosity was a stubborn thing. He crept toward the sound, staying in the shadows, his breath held tight in his chest. What he saw wasn't just a mugging or a drug deal gone sideways. This was something cleaner, colder, professional. 3 men stood over a fourth, who was on his knees, hands bound. The one in the center, a man in a gray suit with a voice like sandpaper, pulled a silencer from his coat. The conversation was brief. A few clipped words Marcus couldn't make out over the hum of rain. Then came the flash, muffled but unmistakable. The man fell sideways, like a puppet with its strings cut. Marcus ducked behind a dumpster, eyes wide. The metallic scent of blood, even from yards away, twisted his stomach. He'd seen enough crime dramas to know the next steps. Wipe the scene, disappear, and maybe leave no loose ends. He was the loose end. And somehow they knew. One of the suited men froze. His head turned slowly, eyes scanning the alley. Marcus didn't wait to see if their gaze met. He bolted. He ran like every breath depended on the next step. And maybe it did. Through back streets and alleys, dodging trash cans and potholes, rain pounding like gunfire. He made it to his apartment, heart battering his ribs. The city's lights bled through his cracked blinds as he fumbled to lock the door, triple-checking each bolt. His mind scrambled for logic. Maybe they didn't see him. Maybe they didn't care. But then the phone rang. Not his cell. The landline. He hadn't used it in months. He let it ring. Once. Twice. He picked up on the third, hesitating. Marcus Hale, a voice rasped. You saw something tonight. That was a mistake. Click. He yanked the cord from the wall, breath trembling. By morning, the news didn't mention the murder. Not even a missing person alert. It was like it never happened. And Marcus, suddenly unable to trust silence, sleep, or the shadows on his walls, knew what he had to do. Report it. He walked into the Harridan Police Department just after noon, soaked in sweat despite the cold. The receptionist sent him to the 3rd floor, Detective Lorna Briggs. She looked up as he entered her office. Tough, late 30s, scar along her left hand, eyes that missed nothing. You're either really brave or really dumb, she said after hearing his story. I'm not sure which one keeps people alive these days. I just want to do the right thing. She tapped her pen against a legal pad. Sometimes the right thing is what gets you killed. Marcus waited while she scribbled notes, then passed him a plain business card. If they already called your landline, you've been made. I'm home. Don't use your bank cards. I'll arrange safe housing. But you stay in this until we clean it up. You understand? He nodded, unsure if his knees would hold another second. That night, tucked in a windowless safe house with a single flickering lamp and no cell reception, Marcus lay awake. Every noise made him flinch. Every silence stretched too long. He didn't feel protected. He felt like bait. And when he finally drifted off, he dreamed of eyes in the dark, watching, waiting. But the real danger wasn't that the killers knew who he was. The real danger was that someone inside the police did too. Chapter 2. The safe house isn't safe. The safe house had all the warmth of a morgue. Cinder block walls, a sagging twin bed, and a bulb in the ceiling that buzzed like a dying fly. There was no clock, just the endless tick of time measured in fear. Marcus Hale had never been in hiding before. He never thought he'd have to be. But now, hiding was the only thing keeping him alive. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift whenever he blinked. Sleep hadn't come easy. When it did, it brought no peace, only fragmented dreams of blood, alleyways, and gray suits. He hadn't heard from Detective Briggs since she dropped him here 12 hours ago. That didn't sit right with him. By noon the next day, he paced the small room like a trapped animal. No phone, no television, no internet. Just silence, oppressive and deliberate. Then tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks. Rhythmic, unmistakable. He froze. Briggs had said no one would know where he was. No one but her. And she promised any visit would come with a password, pine glass. He stepped quietly to the door, heart thudding. "Who is it?" he called out. Silence. Then a reply. "Detective Briggs. Open up." No password, Marcus muttered to himself. "Password?" the voice asked. She sounded annoyed. Marcus hesitated. Something was off. Her voice was close, but clipped, cold, different. He backed away slowly. "You didn't say the password." More silence. Then came a slow, heavy thump on the door, followed by another. Someone testing the hinges, feeling the frame, measuring time. Marcus's instincts screamed. He ran to the bathroom and locked himself in, opened the tiny frosted window above the sink, and looked down. 2 stories, trash bins below. Better than waiting for a bullet. He climbed out feet first, using the rusted pipes to steady himself. Slipped, fell. He landed hard, ankle twisted, but adrenaline dulled the pain. The moment he got to his feet, he saw them. 2 men in gray suits, waiting by the alley's exit. He ducked behind the nearest dumpster, breath shallow, heart racing. One of the men lit a cigarette, glancing down the alley casually, too casually. They were covering exits, not searching. They already knew where he was supposed to come out. The safe house wasn't a safe house. It was a trap. Marcus crawled between bins, gritting his teeth against the pain, and bolted in the opposite direction. Down a narrow passage, up a fire escape, over a rooftop slick with rain. Only when he was 3 blocks away, and half dead with exhaustion, did he stop to breathe. At a payphone outside a laundromat, he used the last of his change to dial the number on the card Briggs gave him. It rang once. Then again. Then, "This line is no longer in service." Click. He stood there staring at the receiver, the hum in his ear like static chewing through his nerves. She was gone, or worse. Marcus limped to a nearby bench, trying to piece together what had just happened. Either Briggs was compromised, or she'd never been who she said she was. Either way, he couldn't trust her. He couldn't trust anyone. A homeless man shuffled past, pushing a cart full of bottles. He paused, looked at Marcus. "You look like a man who just learned the city has teeth," he said, voice raspy. Marcus didn't respond. "Word of advice," the man added, pointing a finger stained with ink and grime. "People don't vanish in this city. They get buried. You saw something. That means you're next. They'll bury you too." Marcus watched him hobble away. He needed answers. He needed proof. And he needed to stop waiting for someone else to save him. Back at his apartment, now a crime scene, probably monitored, he wouldn't find anything. But there was one place that might still hold something useful. The print shop. He still had a key. It was after midnight when he snuck through the alley behind the shop and unlocked the back door. The place smelled of ink, paper, and dust. Familiar, safe. He moved carefully, checking for anything out of place. Nothing seemed touched. The machine sat quiet. The front windows were dark. In his office, he slid open the bottom drawer and pulled out a locked file box. Inside were his personal items, old ID cards, pay stubs, and a small USB stick he found in the alley 2 weeks ago. He'd forgotten about it. Thought it was junk. But now... He plugged it into the old terminal. A folder popped open. Encrypted files. Dozens of them. Names. Numbers. Surveillance photos. One caught his eye. Holloway, March 12th, surveillance. He opened it. A still image froze on the screen. His own face, captured in the alley, staring at the scene of the murder. They hadn't just seen him run. They had proof he'd been there. Behind him, the floor creaked. He turned. A silhouette filled the doorway. No words. Just the glint of a pistol, raised to eye level. Marcus dove to the floor as the shot rang out, smashing through the monitor behind him. Glass exploded. Sparks flew. He rolled, grabbed a heavy stapler and flung it. It hit the man square in the chest, knocking him back just enough for Marcus to dash past, slamming the office door shut and overturning a shelf to block it. He didn't stop to think. He ran. Again. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew one thing. Whoever was behind this had eyes everywhere. And the more he uncovered, the more it became clear. This wasn't just a murder. It was a cover-up. And he was the only person left alive who could bring the truth to light. Chapter 3. Beneath the Surface. Rain clung to Marcus Hale like a second skin as he pressed himself against the damp brick wall of an abandoned train platform. His breaths came shallow, white plumes vanishing into the midnight air. Every muscle in his body burned from running, but he didn't stop. Couldn't. He had barely escaped the print shop. He didn't know who the man with the gun was, but whoever sent him, they knew Marcus was starting to piece things together. And now they were tightening the noose. The USB drive. It was still in his pocket, the edges warm from his grip. He hadn't had time to grab much else, but that little stick could be the difference between life and death, between justice and vanishing like so many others had. He needed help, not a detective, not law enforcement. Someone off the grid. Marcus found himself outside a familiar door, deep in Southside, in a basement beneath a pawn shop that dealt more in rumors than merchandise. The man who lived there was known only as Ellis, former systems analyst, Now a digital ghost with enough paranoia to put the government on edge. He knocked twice, paused, then 3 times. A sliding panel scraped open. A bloodshot eye stared out. No visitors. I've got something you want, Marcus said. Everybody says that. It's not just data. It's names, surveillance, murder. A pause. Then click, 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 click. The door creaked open. The basement smelled of solder, cheap ramen, and paranoia. Screens glowed from every surface. Wires dangled from the ceiling like vines in a mechanical jungle. Ellis stood barefoot, wearing a bathrobe with cartoon sharks on it and a Bluetooth headset he wasn't using. "You're Hale," he said flatly. "I heard about you. You're the witness." Marcus tensed. "How?" Ellis shrugged. "Information moves fast. Truth even faster when you've got the right antennae. Give me the drive." Marcus hesitated. "I need to see what's on it." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "You're not dead yet. Let's keep it that way." They plugged in the USB. A maze of encrypted folders sprang to life. "Military-grade encryption," Ellis murmured. "Someone took a lot of trouble to bury this." "You can break it?" Ellis cracked his knuckles. "Watch me." 15 minutes passed. Marcus sat quietly, mind racing. The more he saw, the more everything twisted. The photo of him at the crime scene, the cryptic folder names, the silence from breaks. Finally, Ellis looked up. "You're in deep, my friend." "What is it?" Ellis leaned back, eyes serious now. "This isn't just about a murder. This is a surveillance program. Unofficial. Off-book. It tracks civilians, politicians, law enforcement. Cross-reference data sets, video logs, facial ID. Someone is building a shadow network." Marcus swallowed. "Why?" Ellis's mouth tightened. "Control. Leverage. Blackmail, maybe. They're not just watching people, they're framing them. Or worse. You said this tied to a murder?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I saw a man get gunned down in an alley. The killer didn't care who was watching." Ellis pointed at the screen. "Then that guy was either a liability or a threat. Either way, the people behind this, they clean house fast." They kept digging. A few folders in, a document surfaced. Project Nocturne Interim Report. It was dense, full of code names, initials, and redacted lines. But one part stood out. Witness compromised. Subject ID, Hale, Marcus. Priority, eliminate. His name, in black and white. Marked for termination. Marcus backed away from the screen, stomach turning. Ellis stood slowly. "You need to disappear." "No," Marcus said, voice tightening. "I need to end this. I need someone who knows what this is, who can blow the lid off it." Ellis frowned. "There's one name I saw in here. A reporter. Investigative. Ruthless." Marcus looked up. Ellis clicked on a file. A name popped up. Julia Fenwick. "I've heard of her," Marcus said. "She took down a corporate lobby group last year. She's been digging into this too. She's got her own data. We've exchanged a few encrypted messages. Last one was from 2 days ago." Marcus's pulse quickened. "Where is she?" "She didn't say. But if she's still alive, she'll want this data." Marcus left Ellis's place with a burner phone and a copy of the decrypted files. Ellis agreed to stay behind and keep digging. "But you better move fast," the man warned. The deeper I go, the more eyes I feel watching. Someone knows I accessed this. Marcus nodded, then disappeared into the dark once more. That night, he stayed at an old coworker's garage, someone who owed him a favor and didn't ask questions. Lying on the cold concrete floor between stacks of tires and oil cans, Marcus stared at the ceiling. He thought of Briggs again, her silence. What if she wasn't compromised? What if she was fighting her own battle inside the system? Or worse, what if she had been playing him from the start? The question dug deep. In the morning, he tracked Julia Fenwick's last known byline to a rundown corner of the city, a place where reporters came to vanish. The office was locked and abandoned, but an old newspaper editor nearby gave him a lead. She's been chasing something big, the man muttered, puffing a cigarette. Said she was close. Paranoid as hell. Last I heard, she was meeting someone out by the old Mill Street train yard. When? 3 days ago. 3 days. Long enough for something to go very wrong. Marcus made his way there by nightfall. The train yard was deserted, littered with rusted cars and weeds. He moved quietly, flashlight off, guided only by moonlight. Then he saw it, an overturned thermos near the tracks, a smear of blood on the gravel. Something had happened here. He crouched, inspecting the area. A discarded voice recorder, half buried in the dirt. He picked it up, dusted it off, and pressed play. Julia's voice crackled. This is Julia Fenwick. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it. Project Nocturne is real. They're watching everything. The witness, Marcus Hale, he doesn't know how deep it goes. Trust no one. Not Briggs. Not. Click. End of recording. Marcus's hands trembled. He was on his own now. Again. And if Julia was right, the one person he thought he could maybe still trust might be the one pulling the strings all along. Chapter 4. Dead Ends and Double Faces. The city was still asleep when Marcus ducked into a 24-hour diner on the edge of Westbrook, a place forgotten by time and mostly frequented by truckers and graveyard shift workers. Neon lights flickered against the rain-streaked windows. Inside, the buzz of a ceiling fan mixed with the clink of a spoon against ceramic. Marcus ordered black coffee and slid into a booth in the corner, eyes scanning every face. He had been up all night, replaying Julia Fenwick's voice over and over. Not Briggs. Not. That abrupt ending sat like a hook in his chest. She knew more than she let on. Someone had gotten to her. Or worse, she'd been part of it all along. He stirred the coffee without drinking it. What if he'd been a pawn since the moment he stumbled onto that alley? Briggs had vanished. No return calls, no texts, no sign of her at the precinct. The silence was unnatural. For someone who had always followed her instincts like a bloodhound, she had gone dark the moment things turned volatile. He needed answers, but barging into a police station now would be suicide. So he improvised. Marcus still had the badge number of Officer Donnelly, one of Briggs's rookie partners. Naive, fresh, and by the book. But more importantly, someone who still looked at the world like it wasn't rotting from the inside. He found Donnelly's apartment in a middle-income housing complex near the edge of town. He waited until the officer's shift ended before confronting him in the parking lot. Marcus Hale? Donnelly stiffened immediately. You shouldn't be out in the open. I need to talk, Marcus said. About Briggs. She's gone, Donnelly replied, eyes darting around. She didn't show up for roll call. Her apartment's been tossed. No word from her, and internal affairs is circling. So she's not part of it. Relief mixed with dread in Marcus's gut. I don't know what she's part of, Donnelly said, but she looked scared last time I saw her. like she knew someone was following her. Was she working on anything outside the case files? Marcus asked. She kept the burner phone, Donnelly said. Used it for things she didn't want in the system. Only one place she ever charged it. Rundown motel in Harrow's Bluff. Room 9. Said she paid in cash. Marcus nodded slowly. Thanks, Donnelly. You never saw me. The officer hesitated. If you're right about this, be careful. You're the only person left who might know the truth. Harrow's Bluff Motel was the kind of place people went to disappear or die quietly. The faded sign buzzed overhead as Marcus made his way to room 9. The door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled of mold and dust. The curtains were drawn, the bed untouched. A half-empty cup of coffee sat on the table, stone cold. She'd left in a hurry. A backpack sat at the foot of the bed. Marcus opened it. Files, flash drives, and a worn leather notebook. Briggs's writing. He flipped through the pages. Names, dates, places, photos paper-clipped together. But one name kept surfacing in red ink. Randall Kessler. Below it. Ex-FBI. Disavowed. Now runs private security firm for government contracts. Known to bury things. Then a line. Project Nocturne. Kessler equals ghost handler. So this was it. The man behind the curtain. The ghost in the machine. Marcus didn't recognize the name, but he knew someone who might. He made a call to Ellis. You ever hear of Randall Kessler? There was a long silence on the other end. Ellis's voice dropped a register. Yeah, he's bad news. If he's involved, you're already dead. He used to run black budget ops overseas. Dirty stuff. Makes his enemies vanish. Half of DC pretends he doesn't exist. But he does. Oh, yeah. He's real. I've got one address tied to him. A shell office in Brickford Tower downtown. Security is insane. That's all I've got before I trip too many wires. I need to get to him. You need a suicide note, too? Marcus hung up and stared at the address. He had no plan. No backup. No idea what he'd even do if he got face to face with the man. But Briggs had been after him. Julia, too. Whatever Kessler was hiding, it was big enough to kill for. Marcus packed the files from the motel room, stuffed Briggs' notebook into his coat, and left without looking back. That night, a black SUV pulled into Harrow's Bluff. 2 men in suits stepped out. One leaned down and picked up the cigarette, but Marcus had discarded. He looked at it, then at the motel door. He was here, the man muttered. The second man, taller and wearing leather gloves, nodded. No more running, he said. Across the city, in the shadows of Brickford Tower, Marcus stood across the street watching the building. Unmarked, quiet, no logo, just tinted windows and motionless guards. He wasn't going in yet. He needed more. A way in. A name. A crack. And then he saw her. Briggs. She emerged from a side alley, wearing a dark coat, hood up. She didn't look around, didn't hesitate. She walked right up to the building and punched in a code. The door buzzed. And it opened. Marcus stood frozen on the sidewalk. She'd told no one, not even Donnelly. What was she doing here? And more importantly, whose side was she really on? Chapter 5. Into the Abyss. Marcus Hale didn't move. He stood rooted across the street, shrouded in the shadows of a shuttered bookstore, watching as Detective Briggs disappeared inside Brickford Tower. The metal door sealed shut behind her like the lid of a coffin. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back. Whatever lay beyond those walls wasn't meant for people like him, witnesses, nobodies. But then again, he was far past the point of no return. Julia was dead. The men in the black SUV were closing in. Kessler's name was scratched into the underbelly of every lie he'd uncovered. And now Briggs, his only ally, had just walked into the lion's den without a word. He checked his phone. Still no messages. Still no signal from her burner. She was either deep undercover or had chosen a side. Either way, he needed to find out. 12 hours earlier, Briggs sat in the dim glow of a motel bathroom, her back to the wall, phone clutched in her hand. The call to Donnelly had gone unanswered. Hale hadn't responded either. Something had shifted. She had found something in the data. Project Nocturne wasn't just a black ops operation. It was a pipeline, a network for laundering high-level intelligence into private hands. The files in Room 9 pointed to a specific pattern. Witnesses turned assets, then liabilities, then corpses. And now Hale was next. She had one chance to expose the truth, and it lay in the digital vault hidden in Brickford Tower. But the only way in was through the man who had once trained her, Randall Kessler. She pulled up her hood, took one last look at her badge, and left it on the sink. She wouldn't need it where she was going. Present time. Marcus moved from the shadows and crossed the street. He studied the entry panel. No doorbell. No directory. Just a numeric keypad and a biometric scanner. It was designed to keep people out. But he wasn't most people. He circled around the alley where Briggs had come from. A locked fire exit. Security cameras. Motion sensors. But one camera, the one watching the back fence, was pointing slightly off-center. Tampered with. A clue or a trap? Either way, it was an invitation. He scaled the fence and landed behind a dumpster, heart pounding. From there, he found a service hatch cracked open with a broken latch. Someone had already gone in this way. Probably Briggs. He slipped inside. The hallway reeked of bleach and silence. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Marcus moved quietly, pressing himself to the wall. The further he went, the less the building looked like an office. Gone were the motivational posters and cubicles. These halls were concrete, sterile, military grade. Then he heard it, footsteps. He ducked into a storage room, barely breathing. Two men walked past in silence. Tactical gear, earpieces, not rent-a-cops, operators. Marcus waited for the echo to fade before moving again. He reached a stairwell and climbed 2 flights to a corridor marked Restricted Level 3 Clearance. The card reader blinked red. He scanned Briggs' notebook for anything useful and found a code scribbled in the margin beside the name Kessler. A shot in the dark, but he entered it. The reader blinked green. The door unlocked. Inside was a data center. Servers lining the walls, red and green lights blinking like the heartbeat of a digital monster. In the center, a single desk, and behind it, Randall Kessler. He looked older than the photos. Gray hair, clean-shaven, eyes sharp as razors behind wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't flinch when Marcus entered. "I wondered when you'd show," Kessler said, gesturing to the seat across from him. Marcus Hale, witness to an inconvenient truth. "Where's Briggs?" Marcus asked. "She brought you here, didn't she?" Kessler said, leaning forward. "That was the deal. Bring the witness. Walk away clean." Marcus's blood turned cold. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Kessler opened a drawer and tossed a phone on the table. It was Briggs's burner. She gave me access to your files, your habits, your safe places. She gave me everything I needed to find you. Marcus stared at the phone. The screen was shattered. That's not who she is. Maybe, maybe not. But the question isn't who she is. It's whether you matter enough to trust. Kessler stood and walked to a wall safe. He keyed in a code and retrieved a hard drive. This has everything. Project Nocturne. The off-books transfers. The names. But people have died for less. Are you ready to carry that weight? Marcus didn't speak. His mind reeled. The files were real. The conspiracy was deeper than he imagined. In Briggs. He turned to leave, only to find her standing in the doorway. Gun drawn. Eyes unreadable. Put it down, Marcus, she said. His heart sank. Briggs? You shouldn't have come here. You led me here. I didn't think you'd actually follow. Kessler watched from the corner, amused. Marcus stepped forward. Did you sell me out? I tried to protect you, she snapped. But you just kept digging. You don't know what kind of people we're dealing with. They would have erased you in the system and buried the memory of you in some desert. Then help me finish this. We can expose them. Expose who, Marcus? Her voice cracked. The people who trained me? The people who paid my salary for a decade? The ones who told me Julia was a threat until she turned up dead? She looked shaken now. The barrel of her gun dipped an inch. You know this isn't right, he said. You knew it from the moment you saw that alley. She exhaled, then lowered the gun. Kessler sighed. Disappointing. Before he could reach for his own weapon, Briggs turned and fired. One shot. Kessler slumped to the ground, blood pooling beneath his chair. The silence afterward was deafening. Marcus stared at her. You just made yourself a target, he said. I already was, she replied, stepping over the body and grabbing the hard drive. We've got what we need, but we'll need to vanish. For now. What's on there? Names, locations, people like Kessler, more of them. Some of them are still active. She looked at him. This isn't over, Marcus. Not by a long shot. Chapter 6 ties that choke. The storm rolled in just after dusk, smearing rain across the windshield of the stolen sedan as Marcus drove, headlights cutting through mist like dull knives. Beside him, Briggs stared silently out the passenger window, the hard drive resting on her lap like a ticking bomb. They hadn't spoken much since leaving Brickford Tower. There was nothing left to say, only things left to do. Where now? Marcus finally asked, his voice low over the hiss of rain. Briggs turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Safe house outside Miller's Creek. One of mine. Nobody knows it exists but me. Sure about that? No, she said. But at this point, I'm not sure about anything. Miller's Creek, 10:43 p.m. The safe house was nothing more than a run-down cabin cloaked by overgrown pines, sagging at the roof and groaning under the weight of time. Inside, the air smelled of dust and burnt wood. It was a place forgotten by the world, and that's what made it perfect. Marcus set the hard drive on the table, while Briggs began securing the doors. He watched her move with mechanical precision, checking locks, pulling blinds, scanning shadows with a sidearm she never let stray more than inches from her fingers. He admired the way she moved. Not graceful, just prepared. like someone who lived with one foot always on the edge. "What's on the drive?" he asked. Briggs plugged it into a battered laptop, fingers moving swiftly. A flood of folders lit up the screen, each one tagged with code names and ID numbers. Most were encrypted, but a few had previewable contents. She clicked on one. A video file. It flickered to life. A room, sterile and white. A man, handcuffed, bruised, bleeding. Interrogators off camera. Voices distorted. The man's name appeared in the corner. Asset 19A, witness acquisition phase. Marcus's blood ran cold. "That's Luca Grant," Briggs said, voice flat. "CPA from Chicago. Stumbled on a ledger connecting a senator to a private weapons contract. They brought him in, made him vanish. And then they bled him for intel, then disposed of him." She clicked through more folders, case files, transfers, surveillance images, whistleblowers, activists, former agents, journalists. One by one, they vanished into the system, then into silence. "This is a kill list," Marcus said. Briggs nodded grimly. And every name on it thought someone would protect them, until there was no one left to trust. They worked through the night, Briggs decrypting, Marcus organizing. It was like untangling a web only to find more strands leading deeper into the dark. Around 3 a.m., Marcus stepped outside for air. The storm had passed, but the night felt heavier than before. A rustle in the trees stopped him cold. He turned. Nothing. Then again, something moved. He ducked instinctively. A flash. A suppressed gunshot cracked the air. Bark exploded inches from his head. "Briggs!" he shouted, scrambling for cover behind the sedan. The door burst open, and she was already firing. Two shadows darted between trees, silent, coordinated, lethal. She clipped one in the leg. The figure collapsed, disappearing into the underbrush with a groan. The other returned fire, forcing them both to the ground. "We have to move," she hissed. "Now." They grabbed a hard drive, the laptop, the burner phones. Within 60 seconds, they were in the car and roaring down the muddy trail. Bullets pinged off the trunk. A shadowy SUV gave chase, headlights off like a predator through the mist. "Can we outrun them?" Marcus asked, heart thundering. Briggs didn't answer. She jerked the wheel, fishtailing into an unpaved road veiled by trees. "Where are we going?" he yelled. "Plan B." "Which is?" She slammed the brakes and pulled them into a thicket, cutting the lights. "Hide and bleed them out," she whispered. "They'll think we kept running." The SUV thundered past seconds later, oblivious. They waited, silent, still, until nothing but cicadas and Marcus's breath remained. They set up camp deeper in the woods under a canopy of dying trees. Briggs checked the hard drive, intact, but the laptop was dead. Bullet to the motherboard. Marcus slumped against a tree, wet, shaking. "We're not going to survive this, are we?" he said. Briggs didn't look at him. "Not if we stay on defense." She handed him her backup phone. "I know someone. Military intel. Off-grid. Owes me a favor. If we can get to him, he can help us leak this to the right people. Make it go loud." "Names." She hesitated. Then, his call signs Veritas. Marcus snorted bitterly. Truth. Appropriate. "But he won't trust you," she warned. "Only me." "And you trust him?" "I trust that he hates Kessler more than he hates me," she replied. "That's enough." As dawn cracked the horizon, pink and bloodless, they began to move again, northeast toward the old rail yards. That's where Veritas operated out of last, if he was still alive. Marcus glanced back at the woods once. Just once. The cabin, the files, the illusion of safety, all gone. The truth had weight now, one that dragged behind him like a corpse no one else could see. It had a name. Project Nocturne. And it had a reach that didn't stop at city limits. No one was coming to save them, so they'd do it themselves. Together. Chapter 7. The Man Called Veritas. The train yard at Cold Hollow had once been the beating heart of a smuggling route, half forgotten now, rusting under vines and ash-gray skies. Abandoned freight cars sat like tombstones, each one steeped in silence and long-gone sins. It was the kind of place people came to disappear. And tonight, that was the plan. Marcus and Briggs crouched in the shadows of a dilapidated maintenance shed, watching the tracks for signs of life. Briggs gripped her phone tightly, thumb hovering over the encrypted call code. "You sure he's still here?" Marcus whispered. "No," she said. "But if he's alive, he'll answer the signal." She pressed the sequence. 4 rings. Then a click. No voice. Just breathing. Briggs said 3 words. "I need you." A long pause. Then a male voice, coarse like gravel and colder than the wind. "You're late, Briggs." They met under the burnt-out signal tower. A figure emerged from the fog, tall, wrapped in tactical gear so worn it looked scorched into his frame. His eyes, like knives dulled from overuse, scanned Marcus first, then Briggs. He carried no visible weapons. He didn't need them. "Who's the stray?" he asked. Briggs stepped between them. "The witness. Name's Marcus. He's the reason we have the files." Veritas studied Marcus like a bomb waiting to go off. "You trust him?" "No," she said, "but I trust the enemy wants him dead." He gave a small, dark smile. "Good enough." They entered a hidden compartment beneath one of the boxcars, converted into a command cell with antique tech and hand-drawn maps of satellite routes. The moment the hard drive touched his hands, Veritas moved like a surgeon, plugging, scanning, decrypting with the speed of a ghost who'd done this 1,000 times in worse places. "I've heard rumors," he said as folders bloomed across the screen, "about Project Nocturne. People whispered it was buried with the Cold War." "It wasn't," Briggs said. "No," he muttered. "Looks like they just changed the rules." He pulled up files that Briggs hadn't reached yet, names that hadn't been on their radar. Politicians, judges, federal prosecutors, even tech moguls and journalists. All flagged. All labeled high-risk exposure, compromise authorized. "These aren't just targets," Veritas said. "These are pressure points. They're not cleaning up after crimes. They're preventing them from ever being exposed." Marcus stood behind them, staring at the sea of digital rot. His face had gone pale. "My sister," he said suddenly. "Check the database. Rachel Davins." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "You never mentioned." "She disappeared 4 years ago. Worked for a cybersecurity firm contracted by a federal agency. No one ever found out what happened." Veritas typed quickly. There she was. Rachel Davins, Asset Class C, suppressed March 2nd, 2021. Attached, a grainy image from surveillance. Rachel, dragged into a black van by men in tactical gear. Marcus backed away from the screen like it had slapped him. "I thought she'd run," he whispered. "I thought she was trying to escape something. But she wasn't running from anything. She was taken." Briggs gently touched his arm. Veritas, however, stayed focused. "This changes things." "How?" "They're not just silencing. They're recruiting, folding threats into their system or wiping them out. And if you're still alive, Marcus, it means someone inside doesn't want you dead yet." "Meaning?" "Meaning your leverage." They crafted a plan, a bold one, not just to leak the files, but to do it live in real time before anyone could suppress them. A coordinated info drop using old darknet channels mirrored through dozens of safe nodes Veritas had maintained over the years. But first, they needed time, and someone inside the system who could buy it. Briggs leaned back, thinking hard. "I might know someone." Veritas laughed dryly. "If you're thinking of calling him that favor, you better be sure. Because if they burn you, there's no fallback." "I trained her," Briggs replied. "She owes me more than a favor." Later, as Veritas prepped the upload burst, Marcus and Briggs sat in the far corner of the railcar. The tension between them was different now. Less suspicion, more quiet understanding. "Rachel was the smart one," Marcus said softly. "When we were kids, she used to play spy games. Said the government was watching us through the TV." "She wasn't wrong," Briggs said. He managed a broken smile. Then silence. "I want justice," he said finally. "You want revenge." "Is there a difference?" Briggs looked away. "Not anymore." At midnight, the screens inside the car glowed with life. Veritas looked up, eyes sharp. "They're tracking pings. I've tripped something." Briggs rose. "They know we're here?" "No," he said. "But they know someone's trying to expose Nocturne. It's only a matter of time." "How long do we have?" Veritas checked the line traces. 2 hours. 3 if I stagger the packets. She grabbed her gear. "Then we move before the storm hits." "Where?" "To the city," Briggs said. "We make this public where they can't scrub it, before the silence catches up to us." Marcus followed, jaw clenched. He didn't need to run anymore. He was going to fight. And this time he wasn't alone. Chapter 8: The Firewall Falls. The city of Lanton rose like a fortress of light against the shadowed horizon, skyscrapers glittering with corporate pride, their windows reflecting ambition and secrecy in equal measure. Marcus had seen cities before, but never through the eyes of someone being haunted. Every alley seemed to whisper. Every security camera might as well have been a loaded gun. They reached the city limits just before dawn. Briggs parked the rusted sedan in a blind spot beneath an overpass. "Veritas is staying mobile," she said, eyes on the street above. "He'll relay the files from the van. If we go dark, he pushes everything live." Marcus nodded, his fists clenched tight in his jacket. "And the contact?" "She's meeting us at the press building. Top floor. One of the last real journalists we have left." They exited the car and disappeared into the waking city. Lanton's Independent Media Network, or LIM as it was known in certain circles, was once a pillar of truth. Now it barely survived on fumes and firewalls. As Briggs and Marcus entered through the freight elevator in the rear, they were greeted by flickering lights and peeling paint. "Subtle," Marcus muttered. "Truth's not loud anymore," Briggs replied. "It whispers where the world won't listen." The elevator creaked to the 11th floor. At the far end of a hallway sat a steel door labeled simply Archives. Behind it, a woman waited, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a long coat laced with concealed tech. She didn't smile. "Agent Briggs," she said flatly, "you really are alive." "Nice to see you too, Fallon." Fallon Vicks, once a digital security analyst for internal affairs, now a rogue data journalist buried beneath firewalls and enemies. Her eyes shifted to Marcus. "You're the one they want." "Which means I'm the one they're afraid of," Marcus replied. Fallon tilted her head. "Good answer." Inside her server room, Fallon's equipment hummed with life, dusty but capable. Veritas was already on the line, voice crisp through a scrambled channel. "You have less than 90 minutes before their signals triangulate on your coordinates," he warned. "And they're not sending men with badges this time." "Copy that," Fallon said, hands flying across the keyboard. She tapped into a dormant broadcast satellite, hidden within Lanton's emergency system, a leftover from when independent news had a backbone. "We'll uplink the files across 5 simultaneous mirror feeds: academic archives, whistleblower platforms, international news." "Will that hold?" Marcus asked. "Long enough for the truth to spread," she said. "After that, they'll burn this place to the ground." Outside, a black SUV rolled slowly down the street. Tinted windows, federal plates. 2 more followed. Briggs spotted them from the fire escape. "They're early," she muttered. "We've got company." Marcus joined her. "We hold them off?" "No," she said. "We stall. Just long enough." She turned to Fallon. "Do it now. We'll buy you time." Fallon didn't argue. Briggs and Marcus moved to the adjacent floor, empty offices full of broken cubicles and flickering monitors. They set up choke points, blocking the stairwells with furniture, lighting fire alarms to confuse building security and distort thermal scans. From the windows, they watched as figures in black stepped from the SUVs. No insignias, no hesitation. Cleanup crews. "This isn't protocol," Marcus said. "They're here to erase us." "They'll fail," Briggs replied, locking a door behind them. "But we might not live to see it." Marcus checked the pistol Briggs had given him. His hands were steady now. Fear had become fuel. "I'm ready." Briggs gave him a nod. Then they waited. The breach came fast. Explosive charges against the front stairwell, gas flooding the ventilation. Masked operatives moved like phantoms through the smoke. Briggs picked off the first one at the hallway bend. Marcus flanked the second, striking from behind with a fire extinguisher. They fell back room by room, drawing the attackers further from Fallon's server room. Each bullet echoed like a bell tolling toward the end. Back in archives, Fallon typed the final command. "Transfer complete. Mirroring now. Upload rate steady. 50% global visibility and climbing." A thud shook the floor. Then another. They were coming. She sealed the door and grabbed her emergency drive, just in case. "Veritas," she called through the headset. "It's live. Tell Briggs." No response. Only static. Downstairs, Marcus ducked behind a desk, blood on his shoulder. "They're pushing harder." Briggs fired 2 shots down the corridor. "Fallon better be done, because we're about to be overrun." From her earpiece, a single voice crackled back in. "It's out. You did it." Marcus almost collapsed. But there was no time to celebrate. A final breach exploded through the north wall. Briggs turned to Marcus. "You remember the plan?" He nodded. You run. Find Veritas. He'll get you out. What about you? She smirked grimly. I never was good at running. Marcus hesitated, but only for a second. Then he turned and sprinted. Briggs stood alone in the debris-filled hallway, smoke curling around her. She fired her last clip as shadows closed in. Behind her, the screen still glowed. Truth, unfiltered and free, now out in the world. And as the first blow came, she didn't flinch. Because lies were loud. But the truth? The truth was a bullet in the dark, and it had just found its target. Chapter 9, The Fall. The streets of Lanton were no longer just a backdrop to Marcus's life. They were a cage, each turn and alley closing in tighter as his pulse quickened. The sound of distant sirens was an ever-present hum beneath his breath. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving. Veritas had promised to get him out, but promises weren't enough when every shadow felt like a threat. His phone buzzed. An encrypted message flashed across the screen. Meet me. The outskirts. Now. Veritas. No time for questions. No time to think. He ran. The outskirts of Lanton were a ghost town by comparison to the urban labyrinth he'd just fled. Broken down buildings loomed like forgotten sentinels, their windows empty eyes staring out over cracked asphalt and rusting cars. Veritas had a safe house here, one of many scattered across the region, each tucked away beneath layers of deception. Marcus had learned to trust the man's methods, if only because Veritas had always been one step ahead. He reached the location, a crumbling diner at the edge of the city. The sign was barely visible, the neon lights long dead. A single car was parked out front. Inside, the dim glow of a cracked lamp revealed a disheveled booth in the back corner. Veritas sat there, his hands steepled in front of him, watching the door like he expected company. You're still breathing, Veritas said as Marcus entered. That's something, I guess, Marcus muttered, sliding into the booth across from him. Veritas didn't smile. He didn't have to. The tension between them was a constant, simmering beneath every word. What now? Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. Veritas slid a small flash drive across the table. You're not running anymore. The files are out. People will come for you, and they won't stop. But we have one shot to turn this around. Marcus picked up the drive, his fingers cold against the smooth surface. What's on it? Everything you need to expose them all, Veritas said. The people behind the curtain, the ones pulling the strings of Nocturne, names, locations, connections, the whole damn network. Marcus stared at the flash drive like it was a ticking bomb. Why me? Why did they send me into this mess? Because you were never meant to survive, Veritas replied, his voice low. You're a witness, a liability. But now you're more than that. You're a weapon. Marcus didn't know how to respond. His mind was still reeling from the chaos of the last 24 hours. The gunfire, the smoke, Briggs's face as she disappeared behind the wall of fire. Was she dead? Was anyone still alive? Veritas leaned forward. I can get you out of here, but only if you trust me. The game's changed. The people you're up against, they won't let you walk away from this. They'll burn this whole city down just to make sure you stay quiet. You want it to survive? You have to fight. And you have to be smart. Marcus nodded, though his gut twisted. Where do we go from here? The media's picked it up, Veritas said, tapping a few keys on his phone. The files are out in the world. They're being spread faster than they can suppress them. But that means the clock's ticking. Your name is already on their radar. Marcus took a deep breath. How long do we have? Not long. Veritas's eyes were cold. We move tonight. The plan was simple, but nothing about it felt safe. Veritas's contacts in the underground had already begun to stir. Lanton's shadowy underbelly had its own rules, its own code, and now they had to exploit it. But Marcus knew the truth. Veritas was a ghost, someone who moved in and out of the system without ever being seen. The people they were up against didn't operate by rules. They would stop at nothing to finish what they'd started. In Briggs, Marcus didn't want to think about that. The way she'd fought to protect him, the way she'd kept pushing when the odds were insurmountable. He owed her everything. But that wasn't enough to save her. It wasn't enough to save any of them. Veritas led Marcus through a labyrinth of back alleys and hidden tunnels, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who knew the city better than its own pulse. They emerged in the underbelly of an old factory, another forgotten relic of Lanton's industrial past. Inside, a team of hackers was already at work, wiring up equipment to send the final, most dangerous file into the dark web. Once this hits, it's over, Veritas said. They'll come for you. They'll come for all of us. But you'll have a fighting chance. Marcus stood still, absorbing the gravity of it all. The weight of the information in his hands was crushing. The people behind the curtain, the ones who had built their empire on lies and blood, they were coming. And now he was the one standing in their way. Who are they? Marcus asked. Who's really behind this? Veritas gave a humorless chuckle. Does it matter? They've been watching you, Marcus. Watching your every move since you walked into the picture. You're not a pawn anymore. You're the king. Marcus shook his head. I don't feel like a king. Veritas's eyes hardened. You will. The digital countdown began, ticking away in the dim glow of the factory's half-lit interior. Marcus stood at the window, watching the city outside, each passing car, each flickering light, each face that blurred by. The sirens were growing louder. It wouldn't be long now before everything exploded. Time's up, Veritas said softly. They'll be here in 5 minutes. You ready? Marcus turned. I'll never be ready for this. Then make sure they never see you coming. As they moved out of the factory, the ground shook with the distant rumble of approaching vehicles. It wasn't just a raid. They were bringing everything they had to end this. But Marcus wasn't the same man who had stumbled into this nightmare weeks ago. He had nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. The final moments were closing in, and Marcus's mind raced. There was no escape, no easy way out. There was only the fight. In that fight, he was going to win. Chapter 10, The Reckoning. The darkness outside was absolute, as if the entire city had swallowed itself whole. Lanton's skyline, once alive with the pulse of the streets, now seemed like a haunting silhouette against the blackened sky. Marcus stood in the alleyway behind the factory, his heart hammering in his chest, his breath shallow and quick. Everything was moving too fast, slipping through his fingers like sand. The countdown was nearly up, and he could feel it, the weight of inevitability pressing down on him. 5 minutes, Veritas had said, his voice flat with certainty. And now those minutes were up. They were coming. Marcus's hand gripped the cold steel of the gun in his waistband, a weight he never thought he'd have to carry. But here he was, ready to fight for his life and the truth. Behind him, Veritas's team was preparing to transmit the final piece of evidence, the last file that would expose the names, the faces, the connections of those who had controlled this city from the shadows. The file would go live to the highest bidder, the media, the world. And in doing so, it would open the floodgates, either for Marcus to disappear into the darkness or for the storm to break, with him at the center. But the choice had already been made. He had no option but to see it through. The first vehicle rolled into view, a black SUV cutting through the shadows. It was quiet, eerie in its stillness. But Marcus knew better. He could almost hear the hum of the engine, the mechanical rhythm of danger. The men inside wouldn't hesitate. Neither would he. Veritas motioned for Marcus to move, and they slipped further into the shadows. The rest of the team was already in place, scattered across the abandoned buildings that surrounded the factory. They'd set the trap, created a perfect storm. Marcus's eyes locked with Veritas one last time. The man's face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a glint of understanding. "Do it," Marcus said, his voice a low growl. Veritas didn't hesitate. With a swift movement, he sent the file. The hum of the transmission was a sharp, cutting sound in the silence. Then, silence, broken only by the distant rumble of footsteps approaching. "Stay hidden," Veritas warned, his tone clipped. Marcus nodded. There was no turning back now. The enemy moved like phantoms, sleek and precise. Marcus saw them first, two men in tactical gear, their faces obscured by black masks. They moved quickly, methodical, checking their surroundings with the practiced calm of people who had done this 1,000 times before. They had no idea what they were walking into. As they neared the entrance of the factory, Marcus dropped to his knees, blending into the shadows as he'd been trained. The gun in his hand felt like a lifeline, his fingers wrapped tightly around the cold metal, his heartbeat pulsing in his ears. Veritas's voice came through the earpiece, calm and controlled. "We've got company. Marcus, take them out." Marcus nodded, taking a deep breath. He rose silently, emerging from the shadows like a predator hunting its prey. The first man didn't even have time to react. One clean shot, precise, calculated. The man crumpled to the ground, his body hitting the dirt with a soft thud. The second man whipped around, gun drawn, but Marcus was faster. He closed the distance between them in seconds, using his body weight to knock the weapon out of the man's hand. A quick struggle ensued, but Marcus was stronger, fueled by desperation. The man's breath came in panicked gasps as Marcus slammed him against the wall. "Who sent you?" Marcus growled, his face inches from the man's. The truth was slipping through his fingers. Everything he'd worked for was on the line. He needed answers. "You're dead," the man snarled, his eyes wild. "They'll find you. They always do." The words rang in Marcus's ears, an omen of what was to come. But he didn't have time for threats. He pulled the trigger. One last shot. The man fell, lifeless. Veritas was already moving, his team sweeping through the factory with ruthless efficiency. They had no time to waste. The digital war had already begun, and now the physical one was in full swing. As the minutes stretched on, the factory came alive with the sharp staccato of gunfire. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept moving, following Veritas's voice through the chaos. "Get to the extraction point," Veritas ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil. "This is it." They made their way to the back door, where the sound of an approaching helicopter could be heard. Veritas had arranged for the extraction, a fast getaway before the storm fully hit. But the reality of it all was sinking in. This wasn't a victory. Not yet. They reached the landing pad, the helicopter's blades whirring louder with every passing second. Marcus didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. Let's go, Veritas said, already in the air, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of pursuit. Marcus hesitated, glancing over his shoulder one last time. Lanton, the city he had known, was already crumbling behind him. The truth was out. The people who had controlled everything from the shadows were exposed, their secrets laid bare for the world to see. But Marcus wasn't free. Not yet. He could feel it, the presence of those who still wanted him dead. They wouldn't stop. They couldn't. He climbed aboard the helicopter, sitting down beside Veritas, who gave him a brief nod of acknowledgement. Is it over? Marcus asked, his voice rough. Veritas glanced out the window, his expression unreadable. No, but we've given them something they can't ignore. As the helicopter rose into the night sky, Marcus looked down at the city. Lanton, the place that had tried to destroy him. It was a city of lies, of corruption, of death. But now it was a city in chaos. The storm was only just beginning, and Marcus knew one thing for certain. No one was safe. Not even him. But for the first time, he wasn't the only one hunting.